On a fog-shrouded morning in March 1279, the fate of an empire hung in the balance. Here, in the narrow waters near Yamen Mountain, the last remnants of the Song dynasty prepared for their final battle against the unstoppable force of Kublai Khan's Yuan dynasty. The Song dynasty, which had ruled China for over 3 centuries, was in its death throes. The Mongols, led by Kublai Khan, had systematically conquered the north and were now pressing south with overwhelming force. The Song dynasty was one of the most culturally and technologically advanced civilizations in human history. They had invented gunpowder, the compass, and printing. But military might was never their strongest suit. City after city fell. The Song capital of Hangzhou surrendered in 1276. The 7-year-old Emperor Gong was captured. But loyalists refused to surrender, placing first his half-brother, then his younger brother on the throne, fleeing ever southward. What we see in these final years is not just military defeat, but the collision of 2 worlds. The Song represented Chinese civilization at its peak, refined, scholarly, sophisticated. The Yuan represented something entirely different, a nomadic empire that had conquered half the known world. By 1278, what remained of the Song dynasty existed only on water. The boy Emperor Bing, barely 8 years old, held court aboard a floating palace, protected by a fleet of over 1,000 vessels carrying 200,000 loyalists. Leading this desperate resistance was Zhang Shijie, the last great Song admiral, and Lu Xiufu, the loyal chancellor who had become the boy emperor's guardian and protector. Zhang Shijie was a brilliant naval commander, but he was fighting an impossible war. The Mongols had not just military superiority, they had the entire Chinese mainland. The Song loyalists were literally running out of places to run. The loyalists had suffered devastating defeats at Guangzhou and other ports. Each battle cost them ships, men, and hope. By early 1279, they were trapped in the Pearl River estuary, with nowhere left to retreat. Zhang Shijie made a fateful decision. Rather than continue fleeing, he would make his stand at Yamen, a narrow passage near modern-day Hong Kong. Here, he believed the confined waters would negate the Yuan fleet's numerical advantage. Zhang Shijie's strategy was actually quite sound tactically. By chaining his ships together in the narrow channel, he created a floating fortress. The Yuan fleet couldn't use their superior numbers effectively in such confined waters. But Zhang Shijie's tactical brilliance came with a terrible cost. By chaining the ships together, he had created an impregnable fortress, but also a trap from which there could be no escape. The Song fleet formed a massive floating city, over 1,000 ships linked by iron chains, housing not just soldiers, but the entire remaining apparatus of the dynasty, the imperial court, government officials, scholars, and tens of thousands of civilians who had chosen loyalty over survival. The Yuan fleet, commanded by Zhang Hongfan, ironically, a Chinese general who had defected to the Mongols, approached with overwhelming force. They had learned from earlier naval battles and adapted their tactics for maritime warfare. The Mongols were incredibly adaptable. They had conquered land-based empires across Asia and Europe, but China required naval warfare. They learned quickly, recruited Chinese naval experts, and built a formidable fleet. Zhang Hongfan faced a tactical puzzle. The Song formation was nearly impregnable from direct assault. But the Yuan commander had a different plan, one that would turn the Song's greatest strength into their ultimate weakness. The battle began at dawn. The Yuan fleet attacked not with a single massive assault, but with a carefully orchestrated campaign of attrition. Using fire ships, they targeted the chains connecting the Song vessels. For hours, the battle raged. The Song fought with desperate courage, but the Yuan tactics were devastatingly effective. One by one, the chains began to break. The floating fortress started to fragment. This wasn't just a naval battle, it was a siege at sea. The Yuan essentially laid siege to the Song fleet, cutting off escape routes and systematically destroying their defensive positions. As the day wore on, Zhang Shijie realized the battle was lost. The question was no longer whether they could win, but whether anyone would survive to continue the resistance. As the Song fleet disintegrated, Chancellor Liu Xiufu faced an impossible choice. The 8-year-old Emperor Bing was about to fall into enemy hands. For Liu Xiufu, capture meant not just personal defeat, but the end of legitimate Chinese rule. In Chinese political philosophy, the emperor was the son of heaven, the link between earth and the divine order. Liu Xiufu believed that allowing the emperor to be captured would be a betrayal of everything the dynasty represented. What Liu Xiufu did next has been debated by historians for centuries. Some see it as the ultimate act of loyalty. Others view it as a tragic waste of innocent life. But in the context of Chinese political thought, his actions were logically consistent with his beliefs. Liu Xiufu, carrying the young emperor on his back, leapt from the imperial ship into the waters below. Rather than allow the dynasty to be captured and humiliated, he chose to end it with dignity intact. The sight of their emperor's death broke the remaining Song resistance. Thousands of loyalists, rather than face capture, chose to follow their emperor into the waters. Within hours, the Pearl River estuary was filled with the bodies of the dynasty's last defenders. By sunset, the Battle of Yamen was over. The Song dynasty, which had ruled China for 319 years, was finished. Kublai Khan's Yuan dynasty now controlled all of China for the first time in Mongol history. Yamen represents more than just military defeat. It marked the end of native Chinese rule for nearly a century. The next Chinese dynasty wouldn't emerge until the Ming expelled the Mongols in 1368. But the Yuan victory came at a tremendous cost. The battle had destroyed not just the Song fleet, but the cream of Chinese intellectual and cultural leadership. Scholars, officials, and artists who had sustained Chinese civilization for centuries were gone. The Yuan dynasty was successful in many ways, but it was always seen as foreign rule. The memory of the Song dynasty's final stand at Yamen became a powerful symbol of Chinese resistance to foreign domination. Today, Yamen Island is a quiet tourist destination near Hong Kong. A memorial stone marks the spot where the last Song emperor died. But the battle's significance extends far beyond this peaceful shoreline. In Chinese historical memory, the Battle of Yamen represents both tragedy and heroism. Liu Xiufu's sacrifice became a symbol of unwavering loyalty, while Zhang Shijie's tactical brilliance was remembered even in defeat. The battle has been retold in countless poems, novels, and plays. It represents the Chinese ideal of loyalty unto death, of choosing honor over survival. That's why it resonates so powerfully even today. For modern China, the Battle of Yamen carries complex meanings. It represents both the tragedy of division and the power of sacrifice for principles. It reminds us that sometimes the most profound victories come in defeat. Military historians study Yamen as a masterclass in naval siege tactics. But it's also a reminder that in war, the human cost often outweighs any strategic calculation. The Battle of Yamen ended one of China's greatest dynasties, but it also demonstrated the enduring power of loyalty and sacrifice. In choosing death over dishonor, the Song loyalists ensured that their dynasty would be remembered not for its defeats, but for its principles. More than 700 years have passed since that March morning when the Song dynasty made its final stand. Empires have risen and fallen, but the story of Yamen endures, a reminder that some things are worth more than survival itself. The Battle of Yamen teaches us that historical moments are about more than just winners and losers. They're about the choices people make when everything they believe in is at stake. That's what makes history truly compelling. The waters of the Pearl River estuary flow peacefully today, but they carry with them the memory of the last Song emperor, the loyal chancellor who chose death over dishonor, and the thousands who followed them into history. The Battle of Yamen was not just the end of a dynasty, it was the moment when loyalty became legend, and defeat became immortality.
Thanks for watching.